Two Venezuelan F-16s streak into the Caribbean afternoon, and a U.S. destroyer holds its course. The date is September 4th, 2025. The water is international, the cameras are ready. Washington's anti-drug patrols are tighter than usual. Escorts are stacked along key lanes. And then the jets appear, low, fast, and testing the line. They fly a profile that once rattled warships, pressing close for a reaction while the sea throws spray at their canopies. On the other side sits USS Jason Dunham, a Burke-class shield with eyes that do not blink and weapons that do not argue. This isn't about noise, it's about tempo. Who sets it, who keeps it, and who loses it in the space of a heartbeat. Old playbooks promise drama when angles split and altimeters fall, yet modern defenses measure those seconds with cold precision. What happens next decides whether this was theater, probing, or the first frame of a longer story. Stay with Military Force, subscribe, and hit the bell, because the gear, the moves, and the message are about to come into focus. The pilots chose a sea-skimming profile meant to rattle nerves, because a close flyover can force a warship to reveal habits while giving cameras a dramatic frame. They split into two axes to dilute defensive focus, one jet angling toward the bow and the other sliding past the stern, and they kept altitude low to hide in wave clutter. The geometry looked familiar to anyone who studied the Falklands era, since the idea is simple: arrive fast, press inside reaction time, and make the ship commit. The political payoff is footage that says, "We were there," while the military aim is to read the sequence of sensors, callouts, and weapon checks. That blend of theater and probing sets the stage for what the destroyer might show next, which is exactly why the profile matters. Execution leaned on speed and timing rather than modern networks, because these aircraft lacked a shared data link and relied on basic radios. One fighter dragged attention with a shallow dive, while the partner moved a beam, and the spacing tried to force separate fire control problems. Altitude sat in the spray zone where salt coats canopies and radar altimeters complain, yet the path buys seconds by keeping below many look-down angles. Crew intent was clear: trigger rules of engagement steps without crossing the line that demands a shot, and log every cue: voice traffic, illuminators, turret slews. The entire sequence is about harvesting tells from the ship under pressure, which makes the next layer, sensor reliability, decisive for the attackers. The hazards pile up when water is rough and instruments are old, because low flight over waves stresses both pilot and machine. Mechanical scan radar struggles to hold a ship against sea returns at that height, and workload spikes when a display ghosts or a warning light flickers. Without a digital link, formation cues depend on eyesight and short calls, so timing drifts just as the safety bubble around an Aegis hull shrinks. A turn made 2 seconds late can erase separation, while a misread altitude can push a jet into the inner zone where close-in defenses own the clock. The tactic seeks surprise, but the margin is razor-thin when every meter counts and every degree of bank steals breathing room. Those limits point straight at the barrier the destroyer can build when its systems work as one. In effect, the run tests psychology as much as hardware, because a Navy crew that stays calm under a staged press denies the visitors the clip they want and the data they need. The pilots gamble a lot for a short window: fuel, fatigue, and structural wear, while the ship risks miscalculation if a cue is read wrong at speed. That trade speaks to modern deterrence, signaling under control while keeping escalation brakes within reach. The tactic can still create headlines, yet it struggles to create a viable firing window against a fully integrated shield. And that tension leads directly to the defensive architecture waiting on USS Jason Dunham. USS Jason Dunham fights as a system, because an Arleigh Burke destroyer links every sensor to every weapon through Aegis. The SPY-1DV radar sweeps without moving parts, so tracks update fast and stay stable when the sea is rough. Data routes through combat control, where software assigns threats to the right layer, long, medium, or close, while watch teams verify rules of engagement. This is how a ship holds nerves under pressure, since clear pictures cut panic and shorten reaction time. When the picture is clean, the crew can choose the calmest option first and keep escalation under firm control, which is the point of a modern shield at sea. Layered defense starts far out and closes step by step, because distance buys choices and choices raise survival. SM-2 covers area protection and builds a fence against high flyers, while SM-6 reaches farther and can chase fast targets with its own seeker. Guidance can ride the network or go active in the final phase, which keeps flexibility when the fight turns messy. If a leaker slips through, the inner ring waits with guns that compute lead in real time, and the Phalanx CIWS spits a dense stream to cut aim off the threat. A chain like that turns seconds into space, and space turns risk into something a commander can manage. Electronic warfare sits under the picture and bends it, because the AN/SLQ-32 listens, sorts, and answers hostile signals in ways a pilot cannot see. Jamming can fog an old radar, and decoys can pull aim away from steel by injecting false cues at the right moment. The effect is subtle on a chart, but brutal in a cockpit, since a false contact steals attention while real danger moves elsewhere. Even small shifts matter at low altitude, where one wrong glance burns time and one late correction closes the trap. When the picture on the jet breaks into noise, the picture on the ship grows sharper, and that imbalance decides who controls the window. The gun line is the last word, yet it lives inside a wider kill web, because sensors on other platforms add depth the moment they speak the same language. A helicopter can push the radar horizon, and a patrol aircraft can cue a track before the destroyer even sees a glint on water. Those feeds flow into Aegis and keep the plan ahead of the timeline, while local emitters stay quiet until needed. The result is discipline under stress and measured steps toward force protection, since unity between eyes and guns beats any single piece of hardware. The old profile needs confusion to survive and distance to escape, yet the system cancels both by design. That is why a dramatic pass becomes a data point instead of a threat, and why the attackers run out of options before they run out of fuel, which leads straight to the hard limits on their aircraft. These Venezuelan F-16s carry 1980s brains into a 2020s fight, so the first break is sensing. Their APG-66 is a mechanical scan radar, and it must sweep to sea, which slows updates when the jet is low and fast. It cannot track while scanning, so the pilot loses the broader picture once he locks a point, and the screen turns narrow at the worst time. Sea clutter builds at 50 to 200 feet, and the scope blooms with wave returns, so a ship can fade in and out like a ghost. There is no true sea surface mode to clean the noise, which forces the pilot to twist, gain, and tilt while flying hard. That workload eats seconds, and seconds decide survival against an integrated hull. The second break is teamwork, because these jets lack Link 16 and must coordinate by voice and sight. Without a shared track file, spacing drifts and timing spreads, and a bracket that should land in one beat arrives in two. Hand signals work until spray coats the canopy, while short radio calls cover only one slice of the picture. A destroyer's sensors share everything by default, yet the two fighters cannot share even fuel states without breaking focus. Formation turns become rough, re-attacks slip off rhythm, and the window they try to open starts to close. That loss of rhythm hands tempo to the ship, which is exactly what a layered defense wants. Weapons are the third break, and it shows the moment the pilot arms the rail. The load is mainly AIM-9L/M Sidewinder, a heat-seeking air-to-air missile tuned to the 3 to 5 micron band, built to chase jet exhaust, not to hunt steel hulls. Stacked gases from a ship live in different wavelengths and sit cooler than a fighter's tail, so the seeker often finds no tone and gives no lock. There is no harpoon for standoff strikes, no harm for radar suppression, no JDAM or LGB for guided drops, and no LRASM for smart sea-skimming shots. That leaves guns and geometry, and both demand close range, low altitude, and straight lines. Close range is where Aegis is strongest, so the math turns against the attacker fast. Aging avionics add the fourth break, because small faults grow large at speed. A tired radar altimeter can cut in and out below 500 feet, which makes a safe floor uncertain. An old RWR may miss a quadrant or mislabel threats, which blurs the direction of danger just as turrets begin to slew. Inertial drift can move the flight plan off track, and worn engines raise fuel burn when afterburner is needed most. Every defect seems minor on the ramp, yet each one steals a tiny slice of pilot attention in the merge. Enough small slices remove room to think, and losing room to think removes room to live. All of these limits force a single choice: point the nose, go lower, and try to buy a shot with nerve instead of tools. That path flies straight into the inner ring where electronic warfare bends perceptions and CIWS measures angles in milliseconds. The tactic needs surprise and clean sensors, yet the platform delivers neither on demand. That is why a dramatic pass becomes a calculated risk rather than a real attack, and why the next comparison, old Falklands playbooks versus the Aegis era, matters for the rest of the analysis. Cold War anti-ship tactics thrived on slow scans and narrow channels, because a rotating set could miss a low jet slipping in under the beam. In 1982, a pop-up launch with a sea skimmer could ride through a gap, and a ship with few engagement lanes might notice only when a plume broke the horizon. Today, fixed phased arrays paint the sky without pause, and software fuses tracks into one clear picture that does not blink. The old window opened by timing now closes by design, which flips the balance from daring to integration. The heart of the change is unified awareness, because modern combat systems merge what every sensor hears and what every weapon can do. Aegis takes inputs from its arrays, adds electronic support, and matches threats to layers that fit range and speed. Long reach buys the first shots, medium reach shapes the follow-through, and close-in tools clean the last leak if one appears. Crews see the same truth at once and act in one rhythm, so confusion has little room to grow. That shared picture turns seconds into options, and options into control. Electronic warfare deepens the shield in ways old playbooks did not face, because jamming and decoys now arrive as part of the plan, not as an afterthought. A digital suite can blur a legacy sensor, inject false cues, or pull a seeker toward empty water at the exact moment a pilot must decide. The effect is quiet at the console yet violent in the cockpit, since a single wrong glance can burn the time needed to escape. When the attacker chases ghosts, the defender tightens timing, and timing is what kills or saves. This is how the edge moves from courage to code. Guided weapons also changed roles because area air defense missiles no longer rely only on ship guidance to finish the shot. An active seeker can light up in the terminal phase and cut through noise, while network queues carry the track even if one node falls silent. The result is depth without brittle links, and depth denies the classic trick of saturating one arc to steal a corridor. A formation that once hoped to split focus now finds focus multiplied, which changes the risk math from bold to bleak. That shift changes how attackers plan an approach. The lesson is blunt. Tools from the 1980s cannot force a gap in a 2020s kill web unless they bring reach, smart seekers, and teamwork on the wire. An anti-ship missile needs multi-mode guidance to live in clutter, and a strike package needs data links to hold geometry under pressure. Without that, a low pass becomes a filmed gesture, and a bracket becomes a training clip for the ship's logbook. Surprise fades when the shield thinks faster than the raid, and the fight turns into management rather than panic. That reality points to the outcome we just saw, and to the deterrent message that follows. The encounter ended with 2 Venezuelan F-16 breaking away, their mission incomplete and their limits exposed. They came to test the edge of American patrol space, but left with empty radars and hotter engines, showing that age and noise cannot match integration and calm control. From the first sweep to the final turn, their APG-66 radars, old and narrow in beam, failed to hold a stable picture under the sea clutter, while U.S. sensors linked by satellites and AWACS kept the full mosaic alive. That difference defined the outcome. When data flows in one web, every gap closes before the enemy even knows it was open. American aircraft did not need to chase. They only needed to track, and that patience became pressure in itself. The Venezuelan fighters returned to base intact but outclassed, and the lesson echoed louder than any missile could. It proved that awareness, not aggression, decides survival when both sides operate under watchful command. The United States, meanwhile, rotated its patrol strength with mechanical precision. F-16 units from Florida, KC-135 tankers from the Caribbean Loop, and a scheduled F-35 training group bound for Puerto Rico all formed a living circuit of deterrence. Each move fits inside a broader plan that keeps readiness high without flashing escalation. Rotations like these are not random flights. They are chess pieces placed for tempo and signal. They tell rivals that coverage never sleeps, and that the U.S. can reinforce any axis in hours, not days. The message travels faster than radio. Deterrence is constant because the network breathes as one body. Behind that pattern lies a scale few can match. The American force holds dominance in 3 layers: sensing, striking, and jamming. Its network joins radar, infrared, and electronic surveillance into one field of view, turning scattered dots into a living map of movement. Depth firepower reaches far beyond the visible horizon, from naval decks to precision air-to-surface missiles guided by multiple feeds. Even electronic warfare acts as an invisible shield, bending signals and cutting lines before threats can form a coherent attack. This balance gives Washington the power to manage friction instead of react to it. When adversaries probe, they meet silence filled with invisible eyes. That calm is the real deterrent, because it invites no panic and leaves no exploitable mistakes. Yet strength also demands restraint. Every approach near contested airspace runs on tight rules, where one wrong cue can turn a patrol into a crisis. A misread radar tone, a late acknowledgement, or a drift inside 10 nautical miles could trigger a spiral of reactions no one wants. That is why the rules of engagement and the communication ladder are treated like safety valves. They keep pressure from turning into fire. Crews rehearse voice procedures, coded transponder signals, and radio brevity words so that even confusion has a script to follow. In tense skies, discipline is defense, and the calm voice on the net is worth more than any warning shot. Such rigor does not make the mission soft. It makes it sustainable. It allows deterrence to last beyond a single sortie and ensures that every show of force ends without a misfire. The episode off the Caribbean coast may seem routine, but its meaning runs deep. Power that stays silent yet ready is the kind that endures. And endurance, not drama, is what defines who truly holds the sky. The September 4th incident shows a simple truth. Technology, linkage, and layered firepower shape outcomes at sea. When sensors talk to shooters, attacks must be more than bold moves. They must be precise and networked, and this is visible in how modern systems close gaps. A force that relies on close approaches with outdated platforms will meet integrated defenses that reject brute force, and the result is wasted risk for little gain. To achieve real effect, attackers need long-range, multi-mode anti-ship missiles that can switch guidance mid-flight, and they need modern sensor pods that feed targeting data in real time. Those tools create reach, and reach reduces exposure because the launcher can remain outside the kill zone while the weapon finds its mark. Data links matter as much as warheads, since a single shared track lets multiple shooters coordinate strikes from different axes without colliding or duplicating effort. Suppression of enemy air defenses is also essential, because jamming and seed open corridors that pure speed or courage cannot. For tech-minded viewers, this event is a clear case of cost, effect, and risk, where cheap approaches burn cash and credibility while calibrated investments buy operational leverage. Decision-makers must weigh build costs against political fallout and platform attrition, because a failed probe can escalate far beyond the initial tally of damage. At the same time, naval stability depends on channels that stop accidents from turning into crises. So, deconfliction paths and strict radio discipline remain non-negotiable. Those mechanisms reduce the odds of miscalculation during tense patrols, and they protect both local commerce and wider diplomacy. The lesson is practical. Modern sea power is a system, not a solo stunt, and success follows planning more than impulse. For clear, concise updates on weapons, strategy, and regional risk, subscribe to Military Force.